Let me ask you something, and I want you to actually sit with it instead of, answering it immediately with the thing that you're supposed to say. Okay. When was the last time you did something because God told you to? Not because you could see how it was going to work out, but because the ROI was clear. Not because your 5 year plan had a column for it, not because anyone in your life understood it or validated it or even thought it was a good idea, but you listened to him just because you heard it, you knew it, and you moved anyway. Not the comfortable obedience, not the obedience that costs you nothing and fits neatly into your pretty packaged existing life without disrupting anything. The real kind. The kind where you are sitting across from a person whose entire worldview is different from yours, whose values don't align with yours, whose life represents things you fundamentally disagree with. And God says, serve them, love them, show up for this conversation, be the light in this specific room at this specific moment, even though it's uncomfortable, even though no one is watching, even though you won't be able to explain this to, your friends who know how hardcore convicted you are without getting the look. Like that kind of obedience, because that's the kind I've been living lately. And it has been stretching me in ways I did not sign up for and did not fully see coming. And it has also been the most aligned I have ever felt in my entire life. And today, that's what you and I are going to be talking about. Why those two things, discomfort and alignment, are not opposites. Why the stretch is the confirmation. Why God showing up in your obedience feels less like a warm hug and more like a spotter at the gym, present, invested, completely willing to let you fucking struggle because the struggle is building something that the comfort never could. Hey, you guys, if you're new here, I'm Brandon Lynette, and welcome to the Listen Bitch podcast. Um, I have, I don't know how many episodes I really have on the show. It's like 500 and something. I don't know, like 560 or something. But I started a new rebellion this year. It's called season 10. And this episode is episode 24. I'm, you know, this one scared me a little to write because, not because the topic is controversial. I don't scare easily. I don't give a shit. I have exactly zero apologies available for anything I say on the show. But because what I'm about to share, like, this is personal in a way that required me to actually sit with it before I could talk about it. And sitting with things, obviously is not my natural state. It's a muscle I'm trying to build and flex. And you can ask anyone who knows me. You can even ask, if you listened to yesterday's episode, ask me as my treadmill game, as that. But here we are, episode 24, and the rebellion has arrived at the thing that underlies everything else we've talked about for the past 24 shows. The thing that all the grounding and the healing and the regulation and the visibility and the purpose finding is ultimately in service of obedience, like the real costly, inconvenient, sometimes, a lot of times deeply uncomfortable, always ultimately worth the act of doing what God says, even when you cannot see the end. I'm, I'm, yeah, that's it. Uh, my mess is the message today. That's it. My mess is the growing edge, the conversations I didn't expect to be having, the people I didn't expect to be sitting across from, and the version of myself that is being built in the discomfort of a mission that keeps expanding beyond the borders I thought I would draw around it. Okay. Um, and if you guys have followed me on social media, a lot of things happened that kind of radicalized me. And I started speaking up about my politics. I never really spoke out loud. And it's bizarre to me because I have always been upfront about, my values and ethics and my beliefs in humanity and the fact I love Jesus no matter how far off the path I've ever gone. Um, I always thought, I always told myself I was keeping him in it. Um, but like all of that to say, it, what am I trying to explain to you guys? um, I'm very I was very hard hearted. That's the word I'm trying to think of. Okay. Pharaoh has been pressed on me a lot the past couple weeks, and he's intertwined in all my shows. I have a political podcast. That's not what Listen Bitch is. Okay. We're not, it's not a fucking political show, but ethics and values do matter. And I think, my whole message of like take radical responsibility, step into your purpose, become the person that God created you to be, that all matters in this world is so fucking noisy, and the devil is so loud and obsessed with controlling you, that part of that has to be pulling you back from that, rebelling from the systems, and staying focused on shit that matters, right? So hard-hearted that I was at the point of blocking everybody on my page. And I would say it all the time. There's no point in having a conversation with the other side. There's just no point. I'm done. If you go against something I say, I don't even want you on my page. I just think you're the devil. And I was very firm on that. Um, and God was like, yeah, no, that's not what you get to do. And don't get me wrong. Okay, I will continue to block people that come on my page and don't want to have an conversation. Okay, if you are coming on my page with hate, 100% you're blocked. I don't have time for it. But if you want to have a real conversation like I'm having on my Tell Me Why You're Special show, I'm up for the real conversations. Okay, I'm not up for the, you know, petty arguments, or for you throwing the Bible in my face, or trying to cherry pick Bible verses from a book that you've never read and you don't care to, but you've heard enough that you think you can use it. No, so there's still some set boundaries in there, and I don't feel like my heart is hardened there. But anybody who wants to have a conversation about why, I believe that the Bible is the truth, why I believe that everything God did, whether you believe in him or not, he created you. Whether you believe in him or not, he created the Bible for you. Whether you believe in him or not, he created this stuff for you. Um, and in my rebellion, in my blocking off, he called me to something. Okay. Um, and I'm going to tell you today, I wouldn't, you couldn't have told me 6 months ago I would have the show that I have, but I wouldn't trade it for anything right now. Um, it was a calling, and obedience is not an agreement. And I want to say that again. Obedience is not an agreement, because I think this is where just a lot of people get stuck, and why so many callings just stay unlived. Obedience is not agreement. It's not understanding. It is not comfort. It is not certainty about the outcome. It is not the absence of fear or doubt, or the very human desire to say, God, are you sure? Bitch, I'm still asking him that. I'm like, God, are you sure? God, are you sure? Okay. Because this doesn't look like what I pictured. This person doesn't look like who I expected. This room doesn't feel like where I thought I was going. In fact, I had absolutes. I am not going to do an interview show. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to coach podcasters. I'm not going to do it. Bitch. Obedience is movement in the direction of the instruction, regardless of whether the instruction makes sense to you right now. God doesn't care if you said you were or weren't. Okay. He has a plan. This is about the soldier who advances, not because they can see the whole battlefield, but because the commander can. And God is like, all right, we're going to stretch you. This is the farmer, right? Grew up around those potatoes. You guys, I know. This is the farmer who plants in what looks like the wrong season, because the one who made the season said plant. It is Abraham leaving for a land he had never seen, with no GPS, no Google Maps, okay, no guaranteed outcome. He had no clue, nothing but a word and the willingness to move. And here's the thing about Abraham that I think gets glossed over in Sunday school or Sabbath school. He did not have the full picture. He left not knowing where he was going. And the text says it plainly. He went out not knowing where he was going. It literally says that. You could go look it up. It's not a small detail. That's the whole point. He did not wait for the clarity. He did not need the complete itinerary before he packed his bags. He heard the voice, he trusted the voice, and he moved. And God called him righteous. Not because he was perfect. Abraham fucked up. He made some spectacular mistakes. Okay? I could do a whole episode on that. But because when the instruction came, Abraham went. That's the model. Go. figure out the details in motion. And this is faith, right? Faith is like, God, you're telling me to go. I trust you and I trust that you're going to help me. You're going to help me because I don't think I'm who he thinks I am. And that's been my whole argument with him all along. God, you really want me to talk about you publicly? Because I just said Abraham fucking made big fucking mistakes. Because that's the language I use. I've always used big words for my big feelings. God, people aren't going to hear me. They're going to judge me. No one's going to listen to me. It's so scary out there. And God said, I know who you are and I know who I'm asking. Keep going. And I believe in him. And so I'm like, okay, I trust every episode, every new person I meet. I can't see this and I can't see what comes next until I actually get through it. And after the end of every show I've recorded to date for my newest podcast, and I don't know the timing for sure. I've had it for like 2 months, okay? Had like at least 60 interviews or something like that, okay? I don't know the number. After every single one, I know exactly why God put me there and how he wanted me to stretch and grow. And I'm like mind blown. Holy shit, once again, I tried to be human and tell him he was wrong. you know? And obviously, before I get too much into the personal story, I really want to tell you guys I need to call something out because the trap that keeps people from obedience is not just internal, it has structural support, right? Because the systems that I've been telling you about all season in the rebellion season, that was season 10, there's a very specific investment in keeping you inside the borders that you've already drawn around yourself. Stay in the box. Okay? Stay in the box. The algorithm. And by algorithm, I mean the specific, intentional, high profitable system of content curation that every major tech platform runs is specifically designed to keep you in your bubble. That's not an accident. That is not a side effect. That is the product. The product is called engagement, and it is maximized by showing you content that confirms what you already believe, connects you with people who already agree with you, and keeps you in a comfortable loop of ideological sameness, like you're a part of something that never challenges anything, but it generates enormous amounts of outrage, adjacent emotion that keeps you clicking. You're going to keep going. Rage bait, bitch. Okay. They call it a filter bubble, which is a delightful piece of corporate euphemism for we built you a comfortable echo chamber and we are monetizing your certainty. And the effect, the deeply measurable real effect, is that people become progressively less capable of a genuine encounter with people who are different from them. Not because they're bad people, because the algorithm has been selecting against that capacity for years. You have been trained by the algorithm to find difference threatening. And when you wonder why the idea of sitting across from someone whose beliefs are not yours feels like a confrontation instead of an opportunity. Meanwhile, the government, and I'm not doing the both sides dance here because the deep state is real, okay? It exists behind every government in every country and it has been running things from the shadows for longer than most people are comfortable admitting. Figured out that a divided population is the most manageable population available. Division is not a side effect of political climate. Division is the fucking product. You're a useful idiot. I love you, but you're a useful idiot. The elite families, the ones who eat babies and worship the devil, they've been pulling the strings for generations. The ones who, honestly, if you knew the full picture, your stomach would turn. They need you fighting each other. They need you in separate comps with separate realities and enough outrage to keep you fully occupied so you never look up and see who's actually running the show. You know, I voted for my president. I pray for him, but is all my faith in him? Do I think he's never going to disappoint me? Absolutely not. He's human. He's going to disappoint all of us one way or another. Okay. But can he do things that are helping us? And I pray that God will use him to continue to dismantle the corrupt, devil worshiping, pedophile producing machine that has been embedded in the highest levels of power in the country and frankly in every country. It's not a conspiracy theory. That is a prayer request. And, I if that is something that makes you uncomfortable, I would gently suggest examining why that would be upsetting. And everything he's doing is dismantling deep state, and nobody sees it because the media just wants you pissed off and fighting with each other. You know, the deep state is real. These trafficking networks are real, and the families running things from the shadows are real. And the fact that naming them gets you called crazy in itself is evidence of how they built the system that protects them. So So, when God tells you to go sit with someone whose values are not yours, to be present and curious and genuinely loving and useful to a person, who does not share your worldview, that is not just a personal calling. That is a structural act of rebellion against systems that have been actively cultivating your avoidance of exactly that encounter. A person who can love across difference cannot be kept in the box that was built for you. So, you showing up in those rooms is the thing that the systems do not account for, you know? And this interview show, you guys, um, did I think it was going to be a disaster? I don't. I think so. I think I was like, okay, God, I'll try it. And I just kind of knew that I was going to fuck it up. Right. And, what I think that means in practice, because I think people hear interview show and they imagine like a controlled environment where I curate exactly who comes on. I filter through the stories before I have them. I never encounter, you think I would never encounter anything that challenges anyone's peace. That's not what stewarding a mission looks like. So every single day, I don't um I don't read stories. I don't read bios. Gosh, my throat today. I don't read bios until 10 minutes before I'm going to bring them on my show. So I have no idea what the core beliefs are. I have no idea what we're going to talk about. I show up surprised, and I write down a simple little prayer before everyone, and it's the same thing over and over. And I'm basically like, God, I hope you have me. I hope you have me because I have no idea how this is going to go, and the words that come out of my mouth, like, you're going to have to be them, because I know what the human part of me wants to say. I know what the ego wants to say. But if I'm serving you, then you got to give me the words. So I'm sitting across from these people in a conversation on camera in the intimate space that an interview creates. And these people do not share my faith. They, not all of them, share my values. They're living lives that from the outside look very different from everything I stand for and talk about on the show. And here's what I could tell you about every single conversation. God is in the room, and not in a background music kind of way, but very tangible, specific. You can feel it way. In the way where you say something, you don't plan to, and then I just watch it land. And am I being received in a beautiful way? Fuck yes. But it's happening in a way where someone who would never walk into a church and never listen to a Christian podcast and would absolutely roll their eyes at half of what I say on the show, they open up with me because that conversation is real. And in that moment, because of God, I see them. I use his eyes. I say, God, this is you. Like, I created the show. You got to do the rest. Right. Because that space is safe, because I show up without an agenda to convert them, like with a genuine desire to know and understand a perspective. Something true has moved between every conversation. That is light. That is exactly what light does. It does not stay in the rooms where everybody always agrees that it should be there. It goes into the dark, and the dark is not always dramatic in obvious places. Sometimes the dark is a conversation that makes you uncomfortable. Sometimes the dark is the room where you're the only person who believes what you believe. Sometimes the dark is the podcast guest who lives in a way that maybe I can't affirm and says things that I don't agree with, but also undeniably a person that loves and that God sent to me for that moment. And here's what the stretch has taught me. Every time I go into one of those conversations with the genuine intention to serve, I'm not performing Christianity. I'm not a Bible thumping. You guys will never look at me and think, wow, that's her. I'm not trying to score debate points even. I'm not here to be the representative of my worldview against theirs, but to actually genuinely, curiously serve the person in front of me. And I come out changed to every episode. And it's not my values. That's not going to change. My beliefs will never fucking change. What's changing is my capacity. my capacity for patience, for nuance, for holding complexity without collapsing it into something simpler or more comfortable, for love that is not conditional on agreement. Every single time I sit down in that chair and I feel that discomfort rise. And it's a specific familiar discomfort of this is not easy and this is not what I have chosen. Again, I bring him in it and he's there and I feel it. It's not a warm sensation, it's not a sign, it's just a certainty. There is a certainty of alignment, the specific feeling of being in the exact place I'm supposed to be, doing the exact thing that I'm supposed to be doing, even though it does cost me to be there. And that feeling, that uncomfortable certainty is the confirmation that I'm moving in the right direction. Because the things that God calls us to are not always easy. And whatever you're saying you don't want to do right now or that you'll never do is probably the very fucking thing. He's like, bitch, you need to do this. But everything you do will be accompanied. And the accompaniment feels different from comfort. It feels like being rooted enough that, yeah, I'm being bent in ways that I thought would break me, but I'm not breaking. It feels like having something to stand on when the ground is shifting. I'm being held up from the inside when I can't like hold on to anything on the outside. I am becoming in those rooms something I could not have become in a comfortable one. And I think that's the whole point. That is the whole point. You think about, I live in Michigan. We have these big ass fucking trees. Like the trees are huge, okay? I'm originally from Colorado, so mountains are big to me. These trees are like mountains to me. They're so big. Never does Colorado have a tree as big as Michigan trees. I want you guys to think about this. The trees in the storm. And I mean a real storm, not like a light wind, but a serious the branches are going sideways. I hope this holds up kind of storm. The tree that survives the storm is not the one that avoided the wind. It's the one that put the roots down deep enough that the wind could not take it. And this is the thing about roots, they do not grow in the absence of challenge, they grow in response to it. Okay. A tree in a greenhouse is perfectly protected from every adverse condition. It grows tall, but the root system is super shallow because it never needed to go deep. So if you put that kind of tree in a storm, it's going to snap. But the tree that grows in the field, in nature, the one that has been battered by seasons, that has had to push its roots through clay and rock and resistance to find the water that it needed, the tree that roots go down 30, 40, 50 feet, when the storm comes, it bends dramatically. Like I literally am in awe, okay? Because it looks in in the worst moments of the storm like it's not going to make it, but it doesn't snap because the depth is here, because the resistance built it. The uncomfortable conversations are the storm. The growth in these rooms, that's the roots. And the calling, the specific irreplaceable God ordained calling, requires roots deep enough to hold me when the wind gets serious. And you guys, this is, listen to me, this is going to show up in the assignment that doesn't make sense on paper. And you know the one I'm talking about. Like everybody knows. Everything I've ever said I'm not going to do, I don't ever want to do, I never want to do this. What's the last thing you want to do? It always ends up being the thing I have to do. You think I would learn. 46 years old, everything that God and I have been through. When I told my co-host, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, I don't even know how long, I said no. I don't ever want to fucking coach podcasters. Nope, not doing it. And I sure the hell am not going to interview people. Nope, not doing it ever. Never ever. I don't, hate is a strong word. I very much disliked it. I very much is like, that's not my thing. It's not for me. I don't like it. So when I was given the assignment, it didn't look good on paper. Your assignment probably doesn't look good on paper either. And the opportunity that is clearly God and clearly outside of every comfortable border that you've established, the partnership that doesn't fit the brand, maybe the conversation you weren't looking for, the door that opens in a direction you weren't facing, and the choice, always the choice between the obedience that moves and the fear that waits for a more sensible invitation. It's going to show up in the calling that requires you to be bigger than your tribe. You're going to outgrow them because every genuine calling eventually arrives at a moment where the mission is larger than the community that launched it, where the people you're supposed to reach are not the people who are already in your circle. where following the assignment means going to rooms your people do not understand and coming back changed in ways they cannot entirely follow. And then you have to decide, do I shrink the calling to fit the tribe, or do I trust God enough to follow it beyond the borders of what anyone around me has mapped out? This shows up in the interview you almost didn't do, or the conversation you almost canceled because it felt risky. And there's times when I read a bio and I'm like, holy shit, this, God, you brought this to me? I know you're joking. I know you're kidding. He's never joking. Okay. And it's not even about what other people think. It's, do I have the capacity to hold this? Can I do this without, the brutal, honest, scary truth that might come out of my mouth? And then I do it. You guys, you show up, you do the thing, you serve, you bring the light, and something happens that you couldn't have manufactured or planned or controlled. God moves the room. And then you come out on the other side knowing that the risk was never really the risk you thought it was. The real risk was not doing it. And if your brain is wired differently than the neurotypical standard in a very specific way, there are more of you than the system wants to acknowledge, okay? Because a brain that works differently is a brain that questions differently. In fact, I think neurospicy brains probably genuinely could outnumber a regular brain because everyone is so specifically engineered and manufactured. It's part of my DNA. Questioning brains, you guys, that's inconvenient for the machine, by the way. Some brains are wired for now, right? For immediate feedback, for the dopamine of visible progress, the confirmation that what you're doing is working needs to come quickly, or the brain starts to conclude that it isn't working and it begins looking for something else to do. Obedience is structurally designed to challenge the wiring because obedience rarely comes with immediate confirmation. The seed you plant in obedience may not produce visible fruit for months or even years and sometimes decades. And a brain like mine, built for immediate feedback, can experience that delay as evidence that obedience was wrong, that the calling was not real, that you should stop. But this is where, and I know I haven't talked about it so much as I used to in the beginning of the show, y'all, but neuroplasticity changes everything here. Like the brain you have right now, the one that struggles with delayed reward, the one that needs the confirmation now, it's not the brain you're stuck with. Every single time you push through that discomfort, every single time you choose obedience when the outcome is invisible, you're literally building new neural pathways. You're growing the capacity for delayed trust the same way that you grow a muscle in the gym, through that resistance, through repetition, through doing the hard thing until it becomes less hard. The brain that learns to trust God in the uncertainty is not born, it is built. And every time we move without seeing the end, we're continuing to build it. It's not a metaphor, okay? That is neuroscience. And it means that the obedience you practice today is physically rewiring your brain for your calling tomorrow. Are you going to the gym for your faith? And every rep counts, you know? And this is the wild card. The little unexpected thing that I tell you is coming. The most radical political act available to you right now, more radical than any vote, any protest, any post, any movement, is to genuinely, actually, inconveniently love a person who disagrees with you. I know my people were like, what the fuck? Is she high? Is she okay? Bitch, I know that sounds soft. Just stick with me for a second, okay? The systems that we've been naming all season, okay, season 10, every single one of them, they operate on division, correct? Like we know there was a huge manipulation and it's been chomping at the bit for years. They've done it with everything. Racism, politics, whatever you want to call it. They require it, they manufacture it, they invest, you guys. They invest billions of dollars annually in maintaining it, okay? Because a divided population is an infinitely more profitable and manageable one than a connected one. Why is nobody getting this? The government stays powerful when citizens cannot agree. Big tech stays profitable when people stay in separate, curated algorithm realities. Pharmaceutical industry stays necessary when people are so chronically stressed by the conflict around them that they can't regulate without chemical intervention. Food industry is staying on challenge when people are too outraged at each other to look carefully at a fucking label. And the one thing that cannot be manufactured or said or hacked with the algorithm that has produced toxic is genuine human connection across difference. And me having a conversation with someone is very different than agreeing with what they do. And this is the one thing the system can't replicate. You cannot replicate that. And it is the one thing that, if it existed at scale, it would threaten every structure that profits from the separation. So, okay, when God sends you into a room with someone different than you, not to argue, not to convert, not to represent, but to genuinely serve, He's not just building your character, He is deploying you as a specific kind of threat to a specific kind of system. The light does not argue with the dark, it just illuminates. And in the illumination, the dark loses its power. And it's not dramatic, okay? It's not all at once, but it is irreversible. And every time I sit down across the seat, I just remember I'm planting a seed. I am just planting a seed. I'm not there for a harvest. I want to plant a seed, and God's backing that up. That seed is a blessed fucking seed. And I plant it. You're being sent into rooms you didn't choose to be in for purposes you cannot fully see, carrying a light that you didn't manufacture and you can't take credit for it. And the obedience, the uncomfortable, inconvenient, this is not what the fuck I signed up for. Obedience. That's what keeps the light lit. And I mean, Jesus did this constantly. He ate with tax collectors, okay, which in that culture was the equivalent of having dinner with the people your entire community has designed as the enemy. He talked with the Samaritan woman at the well, crossing every social, religious, and gender boundary his culture had erected in a conversation so ordinary and so profound that she ran back to her town and became the first evangelist. He touched lepers. He engaged Roman soldiers. He let a woman of ill repute wash his feet with her hair while the religious people in the room lost their fucking minds about the impropriety of it. And this is it. Like, he's not confused about his values. He's not compromised by those encounters. He was not made less by proximity to people who were different. He was more present, more effective, more powerful, because the light gets brighter when you take it in the dark. It does not get dimmed. And this does not mean that we're signing off on their delusion. We love people, we tell the truth, and the truth will always come out of my mouth. And there is a new way I've learned to say it without crushing someone's spirit or pissing them off or turning them away or making them mad. The truth is just an absolute truth, and you can share that with love. Whatever someone believes or however they're living, they just need to know that they don't need to be a part of that herd of society. That this isn't about their feelings, it's about who they were made to be, and a God that loves them so much that He's giving them a chance to go and sin no more, to come into their power. And you specifically, with your specific calling, your specific voice, and your specific combination of wounds and wisdom, and the way your brain works, and the phone game treadmill rule, and everything else that makes you exactly who you are, whatever the fuck that is. Okay. You are called to be the light in rooms that your comfortable version of yourself would never have entered. That's today's fucking rebellion. Okay. That's it. And it's not just healing your own life, though. Heal your own life. We need you whole, right? Not just building financial freedom, though build it because we need your sovereign, and not just launching the podcast, though launch it because we need your voice. All of that in service of the thing underneath the thing. Being so rooted, so clear, so genuinely alive in your calling that you can walk in any room God sends you to and you could bring something real, something true, something that serves the person in front of you, regardless of whether they share your worldview. That's it. That's the whole rebellion. It's not a fight, it's a presence. So, what I want you to do first, because you're like, cool, your story's great, whatever, get the fuck on with it. How does this relate to me? What can I do? What do I need to do? Bitch, identify the room you've been avoiding, the conversation you keep not having, the person or context that makes you uncomfortable in a way that feels less like danger and more like a calling. sit with the distinction between fear that is protecting you from genuine harm and discomfort that is the growing edge of something that is God's trying to build in you. They do feel similar, and they're not the same. And you probably already know which one it is. I know you know. And second, the next time you're in a conversation whose worldview is different from yours, okay? And I understand, like, there are going to be people you just can't fucking talk to, okay? I understand that. That's not what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. I want you to try this. I want you to spend the first 10 minutes asking questions and saying nothing that represents your own position. Not to be passive, but to be genuinely curious, to actually understand the full picture of what they believe and why they believe it before you bring anything of your own. You will be surprised what happens when you do this. The defensiveness drops. I have literally never had anybody in a state of being defensive and like I'm falling in love with these people. Curiosity rises. The person in front of you will become a person instead of a position. And from that place, from genuine curiosity and real presence, you can actually serve them, which was the whole fucking point. And third, you have to find the metric that tells you that obedience is working, that is not outcome based. And this is especially important for brains that are like mine and you need that confirmation. Um, Obedience, over outcome is essentially asking your brain to trust a process without real time feedback that it was built to run on. That is fucking hard. I understand that. The answer is not to force your brain to pretend it doesn't need feedback, okay? It's to find a different feedback. For me, it is that alignment feeling, that there is a feeling every episode where I'm in love with the assignment. I am in love with the assignment. I love who it's calling me to be. I love that I can see the growth down the road. And I'm like, holy shit, like he's going to stretch me more every single time. So every conversation I'm getting in now, am I still nervous? Yes. Am I always going to give it to God? I hope so. I hope so. But that there's that physical sense of being in the right place and doing the right thing even when it's hard that I fall on. And your metric may be different. Maybe it's the quality of the conversation. Did something real move between you? Maybe it's the peace afterward. Maybe it's the absence of the Sunday night hum that signals you're off course. I don't know. Find the signal, learn to read it, and then remind yourself every time you practice reading it, you're building the neural pathway that makes it easier to find next time. Neuroplasticity, okay? Uh that means the brain grows where attention goes. And fourth, I need you to tell God about the discomfort and not don't be a little complainer. Like just make a conversation of it because he already knows about it and he's not surprised by it. He's absolutely rooting for you in it. The discomfort is not evidence that you're doing it wrong. It's evidence that you're growing and he's right there in the stretch, closer than he's in the comfortable places, building something in you that the comfortable places were never going to build. Okay? Ever. Um this we're called, let's live on the edge of what God is actually doing. Okay? And I'm sharing what he's doing in my life right now. I brought it here instead of waiting until it's all cleaned up and perfect and comfortable to share because I'm growing and it's fucking messy. I'm in the arena, bitch. But your mess is your message. My mess is still in progress, and I'm more sure than I've ever been that it's exactly where I've meant to be, and to have that level of it's incredible. And the discomfort is my confirmation. The stretch is the growth. The rooms that you didn't choose are the ones that are building the version of you that was always supposed to exist. And God, the God who sent his son into rooms that nobody wanted to enter, who sat at tables nobody thought he should sit at, who touched the people everyone else walked past, that God is not waiting for you to be ready for the assignment. He already put you in it. You are becoming the light, not when you get your shit together. Now, in the mess, in the stretch, in the uncomfortable conversation, in the obedience that costs you something. So if you're feeling called in this episode, okay, like the show, subscribe, leave a written review, and share it with someone. Go to brandonlynette.com, get on my list. And if you are ready, actually ready, done waiting, ready, I know I'm called, I need someone to help me build it ready, check the show notes here to work with me. Okay, tell me your story. Tell me why you're the one that needs to be heard. I want to know what makes you special. Okay. Get into my podcast support group, whether you want to be on a show, start a show, or have a show, bitch, get in there. The obedience is the answer and the outcome is God's job.